In the labyrinth of human relationships, few statements provoke as much intrigue and contention as Sigmund Freud's assertion that a woman should soften but not weaken a man. This phrase, steeped in the patriarchal ethos of early 20th century Europe, encapsulates a complex interplay of power, vulnerability, and societal expectation, a notion as archaic as it is revealing of the timeless tensions that shape human behavior. To unpack Freud's words is to journey into the heart of gendered dynamics, where cultural norms collide with psychological imperatives, and where the line between strength and fragility blurs beneath the weight of tradition. Freud's worldview, shaped by Victorian sensibilities and his clinical observations, positioned men as the architects of civilization, rational, assertive, and driven by primal instincts requiring tempering. Women, in his framework, were both muse and mediator, tasked with civilizing male aggression through emotional and domestic influence. The idea of softening a man, then, implies refining his raw edges, encouraging empathy, fostering connection, and curbing destructive impulses. Yet Freud's caveat, not weaken, betrays an anxiety that femininity, if allowed too much sway, might erode the very traits society deemed essential to male authority. This delicate balance reveals a paradox: the fear that vulnerability, though humanizing, could destabilize the hierarchies that structured Freud's world. Human behavior, as Freud well knew, is rarely straightforward. The desire for intimacy wars with the instinct for self-preservation. Societal roles often demand performances at odds with inner truths. For men socialized to equate strength with emotional stoicism, softening might manifest as the capacity to express fear, grief, or tenderness, traits traditionally coded as feminine. Yet this expansion of emotional range is not inherently weakening. Studies in modern psychology suggest that emotional intelligence, the ability to navigate one's own and others' feelings, enhances resilience. A man who can articulate vulnerability may forge deeper relationships, resolve conflicts constructively, and adapt to stress more effectively. Here, softening becomes a form of strength, challenging the zero-sum logic of Freud's era. Yet Freud's warning against weakening hints at a darker undercurrent: the conflation of emotionality with inadequacy. In patriarchal frameworks, a man's worth hinges on dominance over himself, his environment, and those around him. To weaken him, then, would be to undermine his agency, autonomy, or social standing. This fear reflects a fragile masculinity, one that interprets interdependence as a threat. Consider the archetype of the henpecked husband, a staple of Freudian-era satire. A man emasculated by his wife's influence, rendered passive and ineffectual. Such caricatures reveal less about individual relationships than about cultural anxieties, the terror that equality might unravel the social order. The tension between softening and weakening also mirrors broader societal ambivalence toward femininity. Women have long been cast as both nurturers and potential saboteurs of male ambition. In myth and literature, from Delilah to Lady Macbeth, feminine influence oscillates between redemptive and corrosive. Freud's dictum distills this duality, positioning women as guardians of male morality, yet always suspect, their power a double-edged sword. This projection onto women of responsibility for men's behavior absolves men of accountability while burdening women with emotional labor. It is a dynamic that persists subtly in modern relationships, where women are often expected to manage both their emotions and their partners. Yet human behavior defies such rigid binaries. Contemporary research underscores that emotional growth in men is not a passive process steered by women, but an active mutual exchange. Relationships thrive when both partners engage in reciprocal vulnerability, a concept foreign to Freud's hierarchical model. For instance, a man who shares his anxieties with a partner does not diminish his strength. He invites collaboration, building trust that fortifies the relationship. Conversely, a woman's refusal to absorb the sole responsibility for softening challenges outdated norms, fostering partnerships rooted in equality. The weakening Freud feared arises not from emotional openness, but from the repression it replaces, the brittleness of a man who cannot bend without breaking. Critically, Freud's assertion rests on gendered assumptions that modern psychology has largely dismantled. The notion that women alone should temper male aggression ignores the reality that emotional labor is a human, not feminine, responsibility. It also perpetuates the myth that men are inherently unruly forces requiring civilizing, a narrative that excuses toxic behavior as natural while romanticizing women as self-sacrificing moderators. Today's discourse on healthy masculinity rejects this dichotomy, advocating instead for self-awareness and shared emotional accountability. Strength is redefined not as stoic dominance, but as the courage to embrace complexity, to be both firm and flexible, assertive and compassionate. Freud's quote, then, serves as a mirror reflecting the biases of his time, and a catalyst for examining our own. The interplay between softening and weakening endures in debates over gender roles, mental health, and power dynamics. In workplaces, men who exhibit empathy are often praised as evolved, yet risk being perceived as less authoritative. In romantic partnerships, the expectation that women nurture without challenging persists, even as mutual support becomes the ideal. These contradictions reveal society's slow pivot from rigid hierarchies to fluid interdependence, a transition Freud might have found destabilizing, yet one that aligns with a deeper understanding of human resilience. Ultimately, the evolution of human behavior suggests that strength and vulnerability are not opposing forces, but complementary. To soften but not weaken is not a gendered mandate, but a universal aspiration. The integration of compassion with conviction, humility with resolve. In this light, Freud's words, though tethered to an antiquated worldview, invite us to confront a timeless question. How do we honor our humanity without surrendering our agency? The answer lies not in policing boundaries between masculine and feminine, but in recognizing that true strength is the capacity to hold both.